What is up, guys? My name is Cameron Gallagher from We're Film, and today we're talking Davinci Resolve's green screening. So today I want to do a video about an easy way to do a green screen inside of Davinci Resolve. In the past, it was a little bit more difficult because you really only had the option to do it within the Fusion tab, which obviously is super CPU and GPU intensive. So if your computer wasn't that great, it wasn't going to work that well. Fusion was kind of buggy as is. Now, granted, I'm not saying that you obviously can't do it in Fusion because there is a much better way to do it in Fusion, but this version that's in the editing page is really simple. It's very easy, and honestly, I would say it gets 90% of the results that you're going to need for any type of green screen. And you can kind of see the one I'm going to be working with here in a minute is not the greatest setup. So let's jump into that. So you can see we're here on the edit page of Davinci Resolve, and I have this clip that I've already color graded, and it's of this kid, and he's just talking, and he's supposed to be behind this white background. Now, what I did was I actually, of course, put the white background at the bottom and the video of him up top. And I already went ahead and color graded this, so you want to make sure to do that so that way the colors look the way you want them to. You can always obviously change that later, but it's just better because the more that you change, the more chances are you're going to ruin the key that you've created. So I would say get your colors as pretty much as close as you can and then do some global adjustments later. So what you're going to want to do is if you can't see the effects panel here, just click on Effects Library and make sure you're on the Open Effects tab. And then you're going to search 3D Keyer. And you're going to click and drag onto your clip. Now, the 3D keyer is not going to do anything the minute you drag it on, and you might be curious as to why you're not seeing anything happen. So you're going to want to come up here to your inspector, and if that's not open, again, just click that. Click Inspector, and then click Effects. And now here is your 3D keyer. The controls are fairly simple, but the problem is, again, if you, let's say, click on the green screen, nothing happens. What you have to do is come down here to this in the program view. There's this little button down here in this little drop down and click Open Effects Overlay. And what this does is this is going to basically show you any on-screen effect overlay that any type of effect would have on the image. So in our case, that's going to be the 3D keyer. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to draw over top of my background. Now you can see it immediately does something. I'm going to go back because I want to show you something. First, you can see that this clip is not a very well lit green screen. He is pretty well lit. There's no separation. There's definitely some spill. It's all wrinkled. So this is a not great scenario. Now it's a bright clip and it's in 4.6K, so it's a lot of detail. But obviously this is just going to show you that you could do a pretty good key with a not so great setup that we had to throw together. So again, we're going to make sure it's selected and we're going to start drawing on that backdrop. And what I like to do is draw a couple lines on this backdrop, and you can see it immediately defaults to the plus over here. So this is your selection, your plus and minus. So these are going to be things that you want that are green. You're going to want to make sure you have the plus selected. And when you have the minus selected, those are things that you're saying that you don't want to key out. So we're going to draw a couple more lines, and you can see it's kind of disappearing. And what I would recommend doing to just see things a little bit better is actually go down here to Output and click Alpha Highlight. That can show you the outline of your character, but what's even better is Alpha Highlight Black and White, and this is more or less just a true alpha. And you can see we have some black speckles here, so we want to get rid of those by just keep drawing and keep drawing over stuff. And that's pretty good. So I'm going to click the minus button now and then draw some over my guy here. That way, at least the computer knows that it does, we want to reject this area. Now, it was a pretty clean key, but I just, want to do it pretty simply. So let's go back to the alpha highlight for a second. So you can see that looks really good. And I mean, when you think about cutting a key off of this, that's really, really good. Now, one of the first things you have right here is the keyer options. And I don't mess with the color space unless, you need to, but just don't mess with that. I like clicking on despill. That just seems to take a little bit of that green tint, and you can really see it down here in the logo and on the edge of his face. If you just click despill, boom, you're getting a little bit less here and a little bit less, and you can really tell on his, the logo and his name. So I like to click on that, and we're going to leave the softness around 50 for now, just because we'll probably mess with that more later. And let's go to our final composite. And to get rid of this, I'm just going to click on that. So if you click on and off, you can see and undo that. So we now I want to start seeing him on the background, and we can switch back and forth in our views, but I want to start seeing what he's going to look like in the actual key, because obviously that's what matters. So I'm going to go to the matte finesse, and this is where you're going to start doing a little extra work. Now what I like to do first is the clean white and clean black, and this is going to be kind of throttling or moving that point of where it's keying in and out. So you can see as we clean it, it kind of adds a little bit of light bleed. And this actually kind of works for this scenario because this is a white backdrop. So in theory, this would spill. So I'm going to go really subtle at like 7.5 on the clean black. Clean white here. We don't want to do that too much. Maybe just a hair. Let's mess with this in and out ratio. This is the next thing you probably want to do. This is going to be kind of where that point is. So if we move it way out, you can see it's building outward. And if you see if we move it way in, it's kind of cutting in. I don't want to go that far in. This is honestly not that bad. I'd say I want to choke it a little bit. So like maybe like negative 28. That way we just don't get like a weird blurred edge that just kind of looks odd. And you can see if we mess with the black and white, they're not going to do too much. So we're going to leave those alone. Now the blur radius and denoise, these are tricky because these are ones that can really look incredibly bad if you mess with them too much. I like adding the denoise, but you can start to see that it creates this like fuzzed edge because it's basically denoising and blurring pixels. So I like to go as low as you can with that. I mean, I would say maybe like 1. And actually, I might pull the clean black down a little bit then. Yeah, that looks better. The blur radius, I don't know. Me personally, I wouldn't use this unless you're really having to blur an edge because of like someone has long hair. Like if it was a girl and she had a bunch of hair, you might need to do that. But in this case, you don't really need to. So I wouldn't really mess with the operation or shape too much. And then neither these tools down at the bottom are really doing that much for most scenarios. So mainly you're going to be working with the clean white, clean black, denoise, in and out, and blur if you need it. The rest of these tools, they can be handy when you want a little more intensive a key. But again, we're just trying to get a really simple, basic, easy key. And we pretty much have it. Now, one of the other cool things that is in here is the garbage matte. So it's not the greatest, and obviously if you were in Fusion, you could do a lot more, but it is nice if you want to just add a quick rectangle. Now you may be like, whoa, what just happened? Well, if I click on the effects button again, you can see this rectangle now. And what I'm going to do is invert that, and then I can move it around. I can make it taller, which is what I want to do. And the reason that you might want to do this is because, for instance, like in our case, there was, it was really bad on the corner here, or maybe there's a light stand or something in the frame. So you can use this really simple garbage matte, and there's also an ellipse if you want to. But the rectangle is kind of nice if you just want to, get rid of something on the sides there. So yeah, that is pretty much it. That is how to get a very super simple and really good looking key. I mean, honestly, this just looks good, and especially under the incredibly bad circumstances of our green screen. If we had a really well lit green screen and it was perfectly even, we'd probably have an even better key. And to be honest too, I noticed that these jackets sometimes can struggle, and we had no backlight, so this is a really bad keying situation. But the 3D keyer in Davinci Resolve did a really, really good job. Now, one of the reasons why I had said about keeping the color correction until later is because maybe this color correction doesn't visibly work for what you have going on. So this is what I would do. There's a few different options, because you got to be really careful, because what's going to happen is, to kind of paint this tree of a picture, so you have, your clip has its color presets as you create them, right? So when you color grade a clip, that is basically the base of that clip. When you add an effect, it is going on top of that. So what happens is if suddenly you were to drop the saturation just like that, you can now see that the key is gone, because those elements that you used to create that key are now gone. So that's one of the big issues with color grading after the fact, is you kind of need to get it close, But then you can do a few things after the fact. So first one is if you go up here in the color page and click on timeline, you can color grade the entire timeline. So I'm going to add a node here, Alt S. And then this is not going to affect our clip because it's going to the entire timeline. Now, granted, that may be a disadvantage because it's going to affect the background and the foreground. So let's say you just wanted to affect the clip. Well, then what I would do is this. So let's get rid of what I just did there. Let's go back. And what I would do is actually create a compound clip. You would name it whatever you want, obviously. And inside of that compound clip is still the effects. So if we were to open in timeline, you can see that our compound clip is holding our clip with our key effect on it, right? So that's perfect. That's what we want. Now, if we go back to the other timeline, our main timeline, now if we go in and color grade this clip, let's just go here and I can mess with the saturation. Now you can see it's only affecting him and it's not changing our original key that we had. So in this case, I might want to brighten him up maybe. You know, again, this is all about style and what you want to match the background. In this case, I probably would brighten him up just a touch too, because I feel like he's a little bit darker than the background. So something probably like that. It's kind of high and his skin is fair, but that looks like it's fitting the stage lighting more than if if we had this where he kind of looks a little too dark. This looks a little bit more realistic as if there's like big stage lighting. So that's an easy way to color grade after the fact, and it can be really useful because that is one thing that I did run into in the past is you get this effect done and then you go to like correct it or match the colors and suddenly you're in a different boat. Now, one thing to keep in mind is when you do this though, you do get rid of the raw features. So what I would recommend doing is doing any raw adjustments first and getting the clip as close as you possibly can on the clip, then do your key, and then do any fine-tune adjustments after the fact that you don't need raw or any of that type of file, information, because at that point it's going to be gone, it's going to be embedded in that original clip, and obviously you can go back to it, but you're going to mess up your key. So anyway, guys, that is it. That is how to use the 3D keyer in Davinci Resolve. It's pretty simple. There is a way in Fusion too, the Delta keyer, and there's I think a couple others actually too. I would love to see something like Primat keyer come to Fusion. I know there's a possibility of it being compatible, but in the future, that would be really awesome. So anyway, guys, that is it. A super and simple way to key your footage in Davinci Resolve with the 3D keyer. I'm pretty happy with this. I mean, honestly, in most scenarios, this is going to do a really, really good key. It's very fast. It runs very efficiently on the computer. And obviously, you can see that was not a great green screen setup. It was not the optimal situation. So it did a great job of that. So I'm super happy. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys later.